We now have an exact figure for how much Donald Trump wants to increase military spending, and it is colossally unnecessary and wasteful and dumb. So Huffington Post reports here, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Monday he is seeking a historic increase in military spending to be funded by cuts elsewhere in government. Trump will seek to boost Pentagon spending by $54 billion in his first budget proposal and slash the same amount from non-defense spending. Wowzers. So first of all, why don't we go ahead and take a look at what the U.S. spends versus the rest of the world? Yeah. Now, you guys have seen this chart before. We spend more than the next 9 largest countries combined. The next 9 largest countries with their military budgets combined. We actually spend 36% of the world's military expenditures. I mean, think about that, man. That's nuts. Now, this is also one of the scariest charts. We've shown this before, too. But let's look at how much the U.S. spends as a percentage of our discretionary budget. Over 50%. Now, what this doesn't include is Social Security and Medicare. But again, it's the discretionary spending that we're talking about here. But does that show you our priorities or what? Now, why on earth would you add $54 billion to that and cut from all the other things that are just so much lower on the priorities list? You know, in other modern nations, I think France is the best example. What they do is on your tax bill, they'll prioritize and they'll show you what percentage of your money is going to education, what percentage of your money is going to healthcare, and it shows you that and I think the raw amount as well. And it shows you, hey, you pay into this system, here's where your dollars are allocated. Here in the U.S., we don't do that. We don't have that. Now, by the way, that would be such a simple piece of legislation that theoretically, even Republicans should be able to get behind. Because remember, they're the fiscal responsibility. You know, we got to track government. You need to make sure you keep it under control and in check. And what's the best way to do that? Well, how about you track exactly where my tax money's going so I can see it? And then if I don't like it, we can lobby the government, the people can, to try to change that. No, we don't have that. Why don't we have that? Because if we had it, people would see the colossal amount that goes to military spending, and they would go, geez, maybe nation building and doing offensive wars against countries that didn't attack us, maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe currently being involved in 7 different interventions around the world is not a good idea. Guys, we have so many interventions going on, I'm not even sure I can name all of them. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, Libya. I think I got it. 7. But if you were to poll like 100 people, maybe 4 or 5 people would get it. So that's how spread out we are. We also have 800 military bases around the world at a cost of $100 billion a year to maintain. $100 billion! Just like that gone every year. And again, at the same time, half the country makes $30,000 a year or less. So that's half the country basically in poverty. And we're wasting our resources. In fact, we are funding this military adventurism. Our infrastructure gets a grade of D. You think maybe we could take some of that money and reallocate it to rebuild our infrastructure and try to make it the best in the world, try to make it an A+? We don't have, it's not just Flint, Michigan, by the way, but we don't have clean water in a bunch of different places. So, 45,000 people die every year because they don't have access to basic healthcare in America. And we can spend $100 billion on 800 military bases, probably most of which are unnecessary, and we could cut them at least in half. It's just the priorities are so messed up. And President Donald Drain the Swamp Trump is pushing us further in the wrong direction. To increase military spending is just simply a crazy idea. That's sheer lunacy. What he's doing is doubling down and tripling down on empire. And this is the guy who half the time said no more nation building during the debates. But look, we warned you, man. Trump, in the very same vein as Hillary Clinton, you can't trust a goddamn word he says because he's been on virtually every side of every issue. You know, you can count on one hand the number of issues he's been consistent on. So this is just another example of it. At the same time he said, let's not do nation building and let's stop with the military adventurism, he would then go out and say, I'm going to bomb the shit out of them, talking about ISIS. He said, we have to take out their families. So not only saying, hey, let's go after terrorists, he's saying, let's go after the families of terrorists. That's as hawkish as it gets. He's also had multiple, different times where he's considering government positions and he's flirting with the worst of the worst neocon, John Bolton, who makes Dick Cheney look like Noam Chomsky. This is a guy who he respects. This is a guy who he's spoken to. So he's going to double down on the same backwards ideas and priorities. And at this point, it's crystal clear. How can a $54 billion increase in military spending? That's crazy, man. It really is. So we're just pissing away our money. You and I are paying for it. And by the way, at the same time, we're breeding hatred as a result of this. You think it doesn't further radicalize people in Pakistan and Yemen when you drone strike their family, when you do a botched military raid, as Trump did with his first military raid, and you kill 30 civilians, including an 8-year-old girl? That's what happened in Trump's first raid. I wonder how many new terrorists were created as a result of that. And Obama's no angel on this front either. 90% of the people under Obama who were hit with drones were not the intended target. That's from internal government memos where they admitted it, and it was leaked in the drone papers. So you keep killing all these innocent people, guess what? It's going to come back to you. And that's what we're doing. And we're also the victims of it, the American public, because we don't want our money going towards this. When you look at the opinion polls, only 17% of the American people still want to be in Afghanistan. And we're still in Afghanistan. We've been there over 15 years. There's no end in sight. It's endless war. This is Orwell 101. And then they have the nerve to tell us, no, it's peaceful. Endless war is endless peace. So when we're at war all the time, that is the definition of peace. Again, that is Orwell 101. We don't want this, but they don't listen to us. They don't care. And President Trump, who said, oh yeah, I'm going to listen to the people. Forgotten man will never be forgotten again, is what he said. Well, how about now? You know, only 17% of the country is with you with your rampant militarism nonsense, but that's what he wants to do. So this is egregious. This is beyond the pale. And it all goes back to what I've been saying all along, man. The spectrum in the U.S. is just mental. You know, we're out there on the right with Attila the Hun and Genghis Khan. They're within our political spectrum when we have already the largest military that's ever been created ever in human history. And they have the nerve to call it depleted. We have a depleted military and let's spend more. There's just going to be more innocent people dying. And of course, the biggest aspect of this is the military-industrial complex. They don't really care about human rights. They don't really care about democracy. They don't really care about freedom. If they did, we wouldn't be best friends with Saudi Arabia and Israel. Saudi Arabia is ISIS that made it. They're a Wahhabi state. Israel is doing permanent occupation and apartheid. We don't care about freedom and democracy. If we did, those would be the first people we break up with. Instead, we prop them up and give them money and give them weapons. So we don't care. We just don't. It's more about imperialism. It's more about power. It's more about control. It's more about the geopolitical chessboard and us remaining on top. That's what it is. And if you can't see that at this point, you're blind. And if you can't see that Trump isn't trying to fix it, again, you're blind.